Carl Jung said that the most terrifying thing for a narcissist isn't your anger, it's your indifference. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why that statement changes everything about how you see narcissistic relationships. If you've ever been trapped in the web of a narcissist, you know that feeling of being completely drained, manipulated, and questioning your own reality. But here's what most people don't realize, and what Jung discovered through decades of studying the human psyche: there comes a moment when the power dynamic completely shifts. And the narcissist? They know it before you do. Today, I'm going to reveal the 7 psychological signs that prove you've not just survived a narcissist, but actually defeated them. And here's the shocking part: you might not even realize you've won. But trust me, they do. Stay with me because sign number 5 will completely change how you view your own healing journey, and sign number 7. That's the one that sends narcissists into complete psychological collapse. Sign 1, your silence becomes their loudest nightmare. Carl Jung discovered that narcissists survive on what he called psychic feeding. They literally need your emotional reactions to maintain their sense of self. But when you finally achieve what Jung termed psychological detachment, something extraordinary happens. Your silence isn't the silent treatment, that's manipulation. This is different. This is what Jung called individuation. You become so psychologically independent that you no longer need to explain, defend, or justify yourself to anyone. And here's the brutal truth that Jung understood: narcissists can't manipulate silence. They can't read it, control it, or twist it. Your silence creates what Jung called a psychological vacuum that they cannot fill. But wait, there's something even more powerful happening that you need to understand. Sign 2, their flying monkeys start abandoning ship. According to Carl Jung, narcissists create what he called psychological satellites, people who orbit around their false reality. These are the flying monkeys, the enablers who once believed their version of events. But Jung made a fascinating discovery: when you achieve true psychological freedom, these satellites begin to drift away naturally. Why? Because you're no longer feeding the drama that keeps them in orbit. People start noticing inconsistencies. They see that wherever the narcissist goes, chaos follows. They realize you're not the problem, you never were. Jung called this phenomenon collective awakening, when a group of people simultaneously sees through the narcissist's mask. The narcissist watches their support system crumble, and they know it's because you've become psychologically untouchable. But this next sign is where things get really interesting. Sign 3, they start copying your healing journey. Here's where Jung's research gets fascinating. He discovered that narcissists have what he called hollow mimicry. They can copy behaviors but not genuine transformation. When they see you healing, growing, and becoming stronger, they panic. Suddenly, they're posting about self-improvement, therapy, and spiritual awakening. But Jung warned us to look deeper. He said, the narcissist's imitation lacks the authentic suffering that creates real growth. You see, while you've been doing the painful inner work, what Jung called shadow integration, they've been performing. They're trying to compete with your peace, but Jung knew something they don't: you can't fake psychological evolution. And here's the part that will blow your mind: they're not copying you to heal. They're copying you because they've realized you've become everything they can never be, genuinely free. But sign number 4 reveals the moment they realize they've completely lost control. Sign 4, their hoovering attempts fall completely flat. Carl Jung said that the most desperate act of a narcissist is what he called psychological hoovering, their attempt to vacuum you back into their reality. They'll try everything. Fake apologies, nostalgic memories, sudden declarations of love. But here's what Jung discovered: when you've achieved true psychological sovereignty, their hoovering doesn't just fail, it doesn't even register. You see right through it because you've developed what Jung called psychological immunity. You don't react with anger. You don't feel hope. You don't even feel satisfaction. You feel nothing. And that nothing, that's everything. Jung said, indifference is the narcissist's greatest fear because it means they no longer exist in your psychological reality. The moment they realize their hoovering has no effect, they experience what Jung termed narcissistic collapse, the terrifying realization that they've lost their psychological hold over you forever. But wait until you hear about sign number 5, this is where Jung's research gets truly revolutionary. Sign 5, they become psychologically invisible to you. According to Carl Jung, the ultimate victory over a narcissist isn't defeating them, it's when they become psychologically irrelevant to your existence. Jung called this psychological transcendence. You're not thinking about them, talking about them, or even consciously avoiding them. They've simply disappeared from your mental landscape. And here's the kicker, they can sense this invisibility, and it drives them absolutely insane. Jung discovered that narcissists have an almost supernatural ability to sense when they're no longer occupying space in someone's mind. They can feel their psychological irrelevance, and it creates what Jung called existential terror. They might escalate their behavior, create more drama, or try to force their way back into your awareness. But Jung warned, the more desperately they try to reclaim your attention, the more obvious their defeat becomes. You've achieved something they never can, complete psychological freedom. But this next sign is where things get really dark for them. Sign 6, their smear campaign becomes white noise. Carl Jung said that when a narcissist loses control, they resort to what he called psychological warfare, attempting to destroy your reputation to maintain their false reality. But Jung made a startling discovery, when you've truly healed, their smear campaign becomes powerless. People stop listening. They stop caring. They start connecting the dots and realizing that the narcissist is always at the center of drama. Jung called this collective psychological awakening, when an entire social group simultaneously sees through the narcissist's manipulation. The most brutal part. You're not even defending yourself. You're just living your life, and that authentic peace speaks louder than any of their lies ever could. Jung said, truth doesn't need defending, it defends itself. Their smear campaign backfires spectacularly because people can sense the desperation behind it. They see you thriving in silence while the narcissist is screaming into the void. But sign number 7, this is the final psychological blow that Jung said creates complete narcissistic collapse. Sign 7, they experience what Jung called psychological death. Here's the most profound discovery Carl Jung made about narcissists: their entire sense of self depends on their ability to control and manipulate others. When they lose that ability completely, they experience what Jung termed psychological death, the collapse of their false identity. You see, Jung understood that narcissists don't have a real self, they have a constructed identity built on their ability to manipulate others. When you become completely immune to their manipulation, you're not just winning, you're literally causing their psychological identity to disintegrate. They might become erratic, desperate, or even dangerous because they're experiencing what Jung called existential panic, the terrifying realization that without their ability to control you, they don't know who they are. But here's the beautiful part that Jung discovered: your healing doesn't just free you, it exposes them. Not out of revenge, but simply because authentic healing creates a light that reveals shadows. Carl Jung's final insight about narcissistic relationships was this: the narcissist's greatest fear isn't your hatred, it's your healing. Because your healing proves that everything they told you about yourself was a lie. When you've achieved these 7 signs, you haven't just survived a narcissist, you've transcended them. You've become what Jung called psychologically sovereign, completely free from their reality distortion field. And the most beautiful part? You probably didn't even realize you were winning. You were just focused on healing, growing, and becoming who you were always meant to be. That's the ultimate victory Jung discovered. True freedom isn't about defeating the narcissist, it's about becoming so authentically yourself that they simply cease to exist in your psychological reality. The narcissist knows they've lost, even if you don't. But now you know too. And that knowledge? That's the final key to your complete psychological freedom. Thank you so much for staying with me through this exploration. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might benefit from it.